at bingley.com.au. And remember, at Bingley, everything's negotiable.
Well, as I suggested yesterday would happen, the address by the Climate Change Minister Greg Combay in Canberra yesterday merely served to prove the case against the carbon tax. If he thought he was allaying some fears, he did no more than unearth others. And just on this global warming, it's generally conceded that satellite measurements are the most accurate measurement of global temperatures, as satellites have onboard precision redundant platinum resistant thermometers calibrated to a laboratory reference standard before they launched. And satellite measurements showed the average global temperatures last month were lower than they were 30 years ago, the complete opposite of what Julia Gillard and her money-hungry government are arguing. Global temperatures in March this year were cooler than they were in 1980. The whole thing is a hoax, and well may Tony Abbott argue that this carbon dioxide tax is no more than a massive redistribution of wealth, which will monumentally damage those industries which produce such wealth. Julia Gillard yesterday was in Queensland near Chinchilla, where farming land is being raped by renewable energy projects. She was confirming funding to build a solar energy system, telling us how many tonnes of greenhouse gas emissions would be saved. What she didn't tell us was the price of the electricity produced. One thing to keep in your head is that coal-fired electricity is the source of this nation's energy wealth, infinitely cheaper than anything you'll get from renewables. And anyway, renewables will never meet the nation's demand for energy unless we're to turn our society back to the Stone Ages. Perhaps that's what the government wants. Turn off your heater when it's cold, turn off the fan when it's hot, because the energy required to drive both will be unaffordable. Yesterday, far from explaining all of this, Greg Combay, the Climate Change Minister, confirmed the concerns. You're surely only going to try to compensate households if your tax is going to massively increase a household's cost. Yet miraculously, we're told the carbon tax will leave millions of households better off. Combay should have said, before I go any further, just tiptoe to the bottom of the garden and you'll find some tooth fairies. How on earth, if producing emissions is the greatest moral issue of our time, how on earth do you reduce them if you say to households, keep living as you are, and indeed we'll throw in a bit extra as well? And you might be able to compensate the consumer for massive hikes in electricity produced by abandoning the cheapest source of electricity, namely coal-fired generation, but you're not going to be able to compensate families for what's passed on to them legitimately by business that is being smashed by the carbon tax. There was no detail yesterday, just an attempt to pretend to Australian voters that the carbon tax is terrific and you're all going to be better off. No indication of at what price the tax will start. That'd be the first thing you'd tell, wouldn't you, or try to explain. Importantly, no indication at the rate at which it will increase, because when it increases, so too will the compensation have to increase, which it won't. And why would we be putting Australian business at a massive disadvantage by wearing another gigantic tax that its international competitors won't have to endure? It's impossible to believe that anyone with half a grain of common sense could attempt this futile exercise in brainwashing. Put it this way. If we're being run by an outfit that couldn't put pink bats in ceilings, couldn't manage a building program in schools, can't answer questions on a broadband network with no economic model that will be obsolete before it's been built, can't, a year on, provide details of a mining tax, why the hell would you listen to anything they said about a carbon tax? The simple truth is coal accounts for 80% of our electricity generation, and it's cheap. And if someone comes along and says, we're going to deny you that cheap stuff, that competitive advantage, you'd simply say to them, rack off. And that's what has to be said to the Gillard government. Get out of our lives. You've made a mess of everything else. You're not going to be given a chance to make a mess all over again. If the government doesn't understand that, the electorate does. And it will never wear either the carbon tax or the Alice in Wonderland arguments presented by the government to defend it.